How's it? Welcome to Canon News Africa, your weekly show that brings you all the things happening across the African continent to do with cannabis, as well as some interesting international news if we feel the need to share the international news. There's so much going on in South Africa right now and the African continent that I sometimes think we actually need international news, but I guess it does add some flavor. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up today.
Yes, we do, man. So one of the hi, Trenton. I forgot my.
Oh, hello, Linda. Sorry, I didn't greet you. That's so rude. Nice to see you.
No, it's fine. It's all right. Lots to do, lots to say. Don't have a lot of time. So today we've got an interesting story about weight loss and weed.
Interesting. Weight loss and weed.
Yeah.
I don't quite see how those come together, but we shall learn more just now.
Indeed. And then also we're also going to be talking about IP protection for our local genetics. There's going to be a little story about that too. So please stay tuned, everybody.
Seems to be a hot topic at the moment. We're also going to unpack a bit about the hemp farmers that are not happy with the current legislation that has been put on the table. It's a no. We need to sort that out, as well as a new strain. And the reason this is exciting is because it has roots right in South Africa and is blowing up stateside. We'll catch up with that and get news of it. Right now, let's head over to Brett in Limpopo for an update on Canon News.
Good day from Limpopo. In the Canon News Africa headlines, there's a secret waiting to be discovered in the foothills of Pondoland. In a nutshell, it's called THCV, tetrahydrocannabivarin, and you've probably heard it for the first time here on Canna Africa News. THCV is a cannabinoid that occurs naturally in high levels in Southern African cannabis sativa. But here's the interesting thing. Cannabis consultant Ayanda Bam says some strains of indigenous cannabis in what used to be Transkei were deliberately modified over the years to reduce appetite. Why? Because it helped the hundreds of thousands of migrant workers endure the hardships of travel and long working hours imposed on them. Bam says government ought to be protecting and researching our indigenous cannabis heritage before the outside world gets there first. Bam's call for government to protect Transkei growers as IP has been backed by the mainstream cannabis industry, which is urging government to allow the development of local adult use markets in South Africa. The Cannabis Trade Association Africa says legalization and regulation of adult use or recreational consumption would bring illegal dagga farmers into the mainstream, create business opportunities and jobs. The official word from government on the National Cannabis Master Plan is that, well, there isn't one. It's all been discussed behind closed doors at NEDLAC. Academic Mark Wegerif of the University of Pretoria says adult use legalization could be a golden opportunity for South Africa to practice social justice.
Cannabis, no, and the legalization of it, hopefully the emergence of the legal industry could either entrench all of these divisions in South Africa, the race divisions, the wealth divisions, the rural-urban divisions, and so on, or it could be structured in a way that helps us overcome them. And what would be very sad is if we saw only an elite industry, probably foreign investor driven, that benefits a few, probably mostly white, while on the other side we could see your black farmer on a half an acre in Skokuni or Pondoland still being criminalized. That would be tragic.
That's Mark Wegerif of the Cannabis Organization of the University of Pretoria, also known as COO. In the meantime, government has come under attack from the hemp industry for what have been termed absurd regulations. Hemp farmers will have to have a license from both the health department and a permit from agriculture if they want to grow hemp for medicinal and industrial purposes. If they don't have a medicinal marijuana license, they'll be obliged to plow their hemp flowers back into the soil and use only the stalks for processing. Hemp veteran Tony Budden says government should urgently review this if it wants to develop a hemp industry at all. And it's getting closer. That is the marriage between big tobacco and big cannabis. Their love affair is getting stronger as worldwide tobacco sales decline and global cannabis sales rise. It's no mystery that they're attracted to each other. Both are in the business of smoking, after all. British American Tobacco says it's pursuing a beyond nicotine strategy and sees cannabis as a key part of its future product portfolio. BAT CEO Jack Bowles told the BBC that the UK's largest tobacco firm wanted to accelerate its transformation by reducing the health impact of its products. BAT took a strategic stake earlier this year in Canadian medical marijuana company Organogram, signing a deal to research a new range of adult cannabis products, initially focused on CBD. The firm's currently trialing a CBD vape product in Manchester. BAT saw its fastest gain in new customers and vapes, with users jumping in the last year alone. Now listen to this, Trenton, from 2.6 million to 16.1 million over the reporting period. Clearly, they can see that the money is in marijuana. Back to you.
That's interesting. I was watching a documentary on Netflix called Broken the other day, and they were focusing on the vape industry. And there's a big vape pen in the States. This is to do with nicotine vape, where it's called Juul. And they sold 35% of their business for $13 billion to Philip Morris. And Philip Morris have actually come out and said that they're trying to essentially phase out combustible cigarettes. So not phase out nicotine, because that's obviously the addictive part, and they don't want to phase that out for obvious reasons, but to actually phase out combusting cigarettes. And what it's a bit weird that at the moment marketing it as a much healthier alternative. And these guys are pushing out vapes. So, well, it's not going to kill you quite as quickly as a cigarette. So there's still a lot of research going on as to the toxicity of vaping, but I mean, yeah, it's absolutely massive. Sadly, big companies and big multinationals will try and divide and conquer any industry that they see money in. So we're going to have to swim with the sharks. It'll be interesting to see how they move into the space, but it is complicated,
It is very complicated, and I think that what you're alluding to is the development of a new generation of cannabis products beyond the first generation, which obviously started with joints and then went into edibles and various different products form. And I suppose vaping is the transition into this, when British American Tobacco and the leading cannabis researchers put their minds together in how they can develop new consumer products that are aimed at convenience, feeling good, getting high, or whatever. There's going to be a whole new bunch of products coming out that we haven't even conceptualized yet.
Yeah, well, trust the Americans. They always do everything larger and faster and quicker than anybody else. It's all this nanotechnology so that edibles get you higher quicker. It's just the nature of the beast. The industry is going to move forward, and there's going to be pros and cons. The good thing is that the more money that comes into the industry and the more people that are using cannabis recreationally and medicinally, the bigger and better it is for everybody. So I can't see that being necessarily negative. The interesting thing about the States, and I was watching a webinar a few months ago about the fact that there isn't federal legalization across the whole country has allowed the craft cannabis industry and smaller brands to thrive and flourish. Whereas if the Unilys of this world were able to distribute product across America, those smaller companies wouldn't have had the time. So I think it's a good thing that the pace has been a bit slow, because it's allowed people to really build on that craft culture of cannabis. We mustn't lose.
I think that's a very interesting thing that you've said there, and I'm going to throw a completely left field comment into this. And that is the role that apartheid radio stations played in the old South Africa of actually preserving cultural identity. It was under the guise of keeping everybody in their places, as it were, but it had the unintended consequence of allowing indigenous music forms to develop far more in the face of American commercialization than they would have otherwise done. And that kind of it's a similarity between the lack of federal legislation allowing craft cannabis companies to get a foot in the door. And I think that hopefully is the way that it will go in South Africa, that there will be probably your giant, like you have in the alcohol industry, of South African brewers or Anheuser-Busch, and then you'll have a whole lot of other more human kind of flavored cannabis companies on the side.
Absolutely. We're very innovative in South Africa, and we also need people need to make a living. So I have no doubt that the craft cannabis industry will thrive and flourish here. Right, let's get on to some more interesting stuff. Not necessarily more interesting, but different. A new strain, and it has relevance to South Africa. We'll be back in a minute, Brett, but right now over to Noxie for Cannabusiness Lifestyle.
Thanks for that, Trenton and Brett. Well, from new technologies, marketing strategies to rapidly expanding availability, there has truly never been a better time to be a cannabis enthusiast. Seattle Times recently did a roundup of new trends in genetics, featuring a hybrid strain called Grapefruit Durban. And yes, you guessed it, it is a cross derived from our very own Durban poison. Grapefruit Durban is a sativa marijuana strain made by crossing Durban poison and grapefruit. The terpenes from grapefruit are said to make this strain smell like citrus with a taste that is both sweet and sour, just like a pink grapefruit. Seattle Times calls it the hottest strain of the summer, with users reporting feelings of happiness and upliftment. While it typically tests in the mid-20s for THC content, some batches have been upward of 30%, making it one of the strongest strains in the world. If you're watching this and you've tried this strain before, drop a comment and share your experience with us, because we'd love to hear from you. And that's it from JHB Lifestyle News Desk this week. Back to you, Trenton, Linda, and Brett.
Thanks so much, Noxie. I wonder when they're putting these strains out and they're sitting in the marketing rooms and they're going like, right, so how are we going to describe the strain, guys? Let's call it makes you happiness, like Coca-Cola makes you happy. Of course it makes you happy. Otherwise, why would you smoke it? But it's very interesting. I find it quite bizarre though that they've called it. It has this grapefruit thing, because in Durban, there's no grapefruit. It's all curry smell. Imagine having cannabis that smelled like curry. There's something original. But the good thing is, on a positive note, is that it has the word Durban in it. Unlike Girl Scout cookies, which is, a massive part of that Girl Scout cookies genetic is Durban poison. But we've never had any credibility for that. So the fact that this has gone sort of haywire in the States is a good thing, because it, again, puts South Africa on the map as a global player and puts us into the front of the news. So I think it's a great thing that's happening. So I don't know if you guys would try that out.
I would definitely try it. The THC content of 30% kind of had me a bit freaked out, because I'm just wondering what it would be like in an edible. Yeah, that would be like hectic. But
so you knock your socks back.
You'll join Jeff Bezos in space for free.
I guess that's what a lot of the Yanks want to do. So all good. Noxie, cannabis and weight loss. Come on, we've got to talk about that. What do you think about that?
For me, it's bizarre, because when you think weed, you think munchies. So for me, the THC and weight loss thing is a bit weird for me. But I don't know, Brett. Do you know anything about this? Can you give us a little bit more insight?
Well, we all know that cannabis is an extremely adaptable plant. And what we're starting to get an idea of, researchers are just starting to scratch the surface of this, is that there have been certain cannabis strains developed in what used to be Transkei that were deliberately manipulated in order to have appetite suppressant qualities. And this was because they developed hand in hand over the decades that migrant labor began in South Africa. So you had thousands and thousands of people coming from rural areas in Lesotho, in Transkei, in Swaziland, etc., going to Gauteng to work on the mines and on big farms. And cannabis being a way of life in pre-colonial and colonial South Africa and post-colonial South Africa, it was an early form of indigenous knowledge development of developing that suited our own conditions. So there lies something that's very interesting, that researchers in the United States, through synthetic means, are starting to work out isolating the actual suppressant, the compound, which is called THCV. And with development and research happening in California on the one hand, and our indigenous knowledge systems happening here, discovering more about this, we should be actually protecting the intellectual property we have and developing a range of diet pills for the US market, the government.
Yeah, I find it ironic that they used it for all the workers as an appetite suppressant, and that's probably because they were starving them, but nobody talks about that. But anyway,
Exactly. It's exactly a very good point you're working on there, Trenton, because it does give for the first time you're seeing plant evolution going hand in hand with a sort of socio-economic trend. It's something we'll need to. It would be interesting to come back to at some point.
I wonder if they'll call it like cannabis light, like a castle light. Stomach in. Get the stomach in, Anyway, I like the munchies. I think the munchies are great. What's about the munchies is not eating crap. That's the difference. If you eat decent munchies, you won't get fat. But the munchies is such an incredible experience to taste food in a different way. So, viva munchies, no THCV for me.
I agree.
Great, guys.
I like the munchies too. Very much.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's it. That's the update for this week. Thanks for all being here. Thank you to our viewers who have joined. Don't forget that we are here every Tuesday, live and direct from Limpopo, Cape Town, and Johannesburg. And we bring you all the latest stuff happening in the news. Guys, have an awesome afternoon, and we will see you same time, same place next week. Ciao.
Cheers.